Chapter 1 notes, graphing points. Graphing points and lines and other shapes is a pretty major part of algebra. So today's notes are reviewing how you graph points. Every point is written in x, y format, where the first letter or first number of the point is the x coordinate, and the second number of the point is the y coordinate. Now, on the graph at the right, you will notice that there is an x-axis, which goes horizontally across the middle like that, and that's labeled the x-axis. So that will be where you go with the first number of the pair. That first number will tell you where do you go on that x-axis. The second number tells you where to go on the y-axis, okay, or the blue axis there. That's called the y-axis, the up and down one, okay? You'll notice that the x's, they're on the right-hand side, or right-hand half of this graph, are positive numbers, and the x's on the left-hand side, or left-hand half, are negative numbers. On the y-axis, a similar thing happens. The positive numbers go up from the middle, and the negative numbers go down from the middle. Okay. The point that's directly in the middle of the graph is called the origin. And that is right here. Okay. And the coordinates of that point are 0, 0. Because it's 0 on the x-axis and it's 0 on the y-axis. So that is called the origin. That's how you spell it. Okay? So let's graph these first 4 points. Now, I'm assuming most of us, or all of us, have done this before, so this is not new. This is just a review. But the first point, point A, is the point 3, 5. So 3 is the x. So you move over to 3 on the x-axis. I'm just going to make a little x right there. You can see it in black. And then the second number is a 5. So I have to go 5 on the y-axis going up. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So notice here's 5 on the y-axis. So our point is at the intersection of those two spots. So I went over 3 to the right, and then I went 5 up. Okay? So that is point A. Get that stuff out of the way here. Now, point B has the coordinates -2, -4. So when the x is -2, that means you go left on the x-axis. So I'm going to end up about right there. And -4 on the y-axis is right here. So the intersection of those is where point B will go. And you can think of it as I went 2 left and then 4 down. Okay? So the first number is always where you go on the x-axis. The second number is always where you go on the y-axis. Letter C, 0, 2. This is a unique point because one of the numbers, or one of the coordinates, is a 0, which means you stay right on the x-axis, or right on the y-axis, or right in the middle at the origin. And then the y coordinate is a 2, so I would just go up 2. Okay, and that's letter C. So a 0 in the x position means you stay right on the y-axis, and then I just go up 2 in the y direction for the second value. Example D has a -5 as the x, so I move over 5 to the left from the origin, and then the y value is just 0, so I just stay right there on the x-axis. So that's letter D. A couple things to remember. Points that are in this region of the graph over here, if you watch, I'm highlighted in blue. This is called quadrant 1. Okay, it's a Roman numeral. And all the points in that quadrant have a positive number for the x and a positive number for the y. The quadrant to the left of that is called quadrant 2, and every point in this quadrant has a negative x and a positive y. I'm going to switch to another color. Now, this quadrant down here in the bottom left-hand corner, this is called quadrant 3, and every point in quadrant 3 has a negative x and a negative y. Okay, so when both numbers are negative, you'll always be in quadrant 3. And then to the bottom right, this is called quadrant 4. And they always label these in Roman numerals. Every point in this quadrant has a positive x and a negative y. Okay, so that may help you. Let me put this inside here. That may help you when you're graphing, to think of it that way. Now, graphing points on their own is fun, and you can create pictures, etc. But in algebra, we try to graph points that have some sort of relationship to one another. And if we page down on the notes, here's a situation where we're going to find points that have a relationship with one another. And we're going to do this by what's called making a table. So notice I have an equation, y equals negative 2 times x plus 4. Now, since that equation has an x and a y in it, it means I can describe it, or the solutions to that equation, using points, x, y, which means that I can graph the solutions to that equation on the graph below. So what we've created here is a table where I have 6 x values, and I left blanks for the y values. And what we're going to do is we're going to plug in values for x into the equation and figure out what's the y that I would get as a result by plugging that x in. So this first one is a negative 3 as the x, so we're going to plug that in here. And remember, when we're plugging in numbers, we usually plug them in parentheses. So I would get y equals negative 2 times negative 3 plus 4. This, when we did that evaluating expressions lesson, this is where we need that. So negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6, and 6 plus 4 is 10. So that means the y that goes with an x of negative 3 is 10. Now I'm going to do the same thing with negative 2, and I'm going to plug that into the equation. So I'm going to do that here. Negative 2 times negative 2 plus 4. So negative 2 times negative 2 is 4, and 4 plus 4 is 8. Now I'm going to do the same thing with negative 1. Plug it into the equation. I get 2 plus 4, I get y equals 6. Okay, now, next I would plug in a 0. Plugging in a 0 is nice and easy because anything times 0 ends up being 0. So negative 2 times 0 would just be 0, plus 4 makes that a 4. Plugging in a 1, I'll do that over here to the right. Y equals negative 2 times 1 plus 4. So I'm plugging this in down here. So I get y equals negative 2 plus 4, which is 2. And by now you may see a pattern in the table, or maybe you already saw it. But if you look in the table, it went 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. You can probably guess the next value. It's decreasing by 2, so the next value might be a 0. And then the next value would be negative 2 if I kept that pattern up. Okay? You'll find when we make tables like this that you'll be able to see the pattern. Now what I want to do, though, is graph those points. So what I'm going to do is take this point, and unfortunately that point's not going to fit on the graph, But that point would become, from the table, negative 310. So the x value would be the first number in the point, and the y value would be the second. Now, these first two, unfortunately, don't fit on the graph, but the next 5 do. So let's graph those. Negative 1, 6. So I'd go back 1, up 6. The next point is 0, 4. Write these down for you. So 0, 4 means I stay on the y-axis and just go up 4. And then I'm going to graph 1, 2. And I'm getting these points, remember, from the table that we made. 1, 2 would be over 1, up 2. 2, 0 would be here. And 3, negative 2 would be here. Now, you'll notice that these 5 points make a straight line if I connect them. Draw a line through them. Okay. We're going to spend a whole chapter learning all about graphing straight lines like this. But for right now, we're just trying to review graphing, and we're trying to review evaluating equations. Now, I'm going to slide this up. And we're going to talk about finding some key points on graphs. Okay? There's 2 points on graphs that are very important to us. One is called the x-intercept. And this is where the graph crosses the x-axis. Okay? That point is right there. So the x-intercept would be 2, 0. So it's the point on the graph where the graph touches the x-axis. Okay. Now the y-intercept, I'm sure you can probably guess what that is. But the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. Okay, and that is right there. And that point is 0, 4. Okay, now there will be other important points that we learn about graphs, but for straight lines like this, 2 of the most important points are the x-intercept and the y-intercept. Okay, and just remember the x-intercept is where it crosses the x-axis, and the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So a 0